design in presentations, and Alex is going to start us off, and he's going to talk about the mediums on which you can make visual designs in your presentations, where to make them, and the pros and cons of each of them. And then we're going to go to Daniel. He's going to speak a little bit on fonts, and then about uploading images, and then I'm going to be presenting on visual aids, and then the images that you had uploaded and the placement they should be, and then Nick's going to end with talking about graphs, how to create them, all the aesthetics to them.
Well, before we start, we might want to talk about what makes a good presentation. To do that, you're going to want to have your presentation be pretty simple. Simple by having no more than 15 words per slide. That way the audience is focusing on you instead of what's on the screen up there. That way they're focusing on what you say. Informative, it should be relevant to what you're doing. Should have, and then aesthetically pleasing. Again, you don't want it to have so many words on there that they don't know where to focus, what to look at. Don't want to have too many pictures on there that you have an idea what to do with it. Tools for presentation design. So there's a few different softwares. We're going to talk about the Google, the Microsoft, the Apple, and a little bit about other parties. The Google one has the most user-friendly software. You're able to edit it as a group. So you can all be on it at once, editing it, making your own changes. It's free to use, and it's stored online. But that stored online is also a disadvantage, because then you have to have internet access to do it. But the Google software isn't quite as customizable. It's more of just the basics. Microsoft is a lot more than just your basics. It's has lots of tools. Pretty much whatever you'll need, you can do it with that. It's compatible with pretty much every software, so you can export it and open it in other software, do whatever else you would need to do with it. But as Adkins had stated in previous classes, they're kind of forceful with what they want you to do. They're trying to set the newest trends. And then there's Apple. They have some interesting software, like your GarageBand and other stuff like that. But then they also have constant updates with their software, making it so they're trying to set their trends too. So they're kind of just fighting back and forth. It's not quite as customizable. It may look like it, but you're only getting the base layer that you can customize. Everything else is kind of set in stone. And the compatibility with Apple is not very good, because you can't open your Keynote presentation in a PowerPoint, or you can't have Keynote on a Windows computer at all. And then there's Prezi, which is a whole lot different than any actual presentation or PowerPoint or a slide presentation. It has more of it's more of an adventure through a story kind of thing. The screen twirls and stuff like that. One advantage about it is it's online again, so that other people can edit it. The disadvantage probably takes more time for you to do it, create it, make it look good. You also have to pay for it. It's not entirely free.
That's not true.
You can pay for monthly, if you have large.
There's a free version of
Right.
For students.
It works great.
Yeah.
For sure.
And then again, you have to be connected to the internet at one time.
Okay, so to transition over to font, I know we've talked a lot about it in the last few classes, especially last time in our reading that we had for today was a lot about font too. I do want to put it in the presentation because visual design is not only about just your graphs, your pictures, charts, tables, and things like that. I mean, font is kind of the main thing in any technical document. You want to look at every aspect of it. The biggest thing that you have in font, there's a lot of different, they're called typeface or font families. The two biggest ones are serif fonts and sans serif fonts. And like I said, I know we went over it, yes, on Tuesday a little bit, but I am going to kind of reiterate what he said. Serif font essentially are these ticks at the ends of every letter. And sans serif, like we said, means without the serifs. You'll notice a lot of, with these is, it goes from thin to thick strokes. So basically what I kind of take from that is it looks kind of a lot older and meticulous. And that's where you get more of a professional font from a serif font. Kind of like cursive is more meticulous. So you kind of get more of a meticulous font with this, whereas with the sans serif font, it looks a lot more simple. I know it actually says Futura Book there. It looks a lot more simple and kind of easy to read. Going on with easy to read, they generally say that with the sans, and like I said, we kind of went over this on Tuesday, that sans, you want to be on a digital document, because with computers and things, they can only actually do about 100 dots per inch, and even Apple Retina display is about 300, whereas when you print it, you can actually see these serifs a lot easier. So generally when you want to do a digital document, you want to try to keep it nice and straight with the sans serif fonts. It just makes it a little bit easier to read. And it does look a little bit better, like I said, online. The one article I noticed with that I found about Microsoft Word actually, I know Alex and Dr. Adkins have stated that they kind of force things on you. The article I read was by Joe Friend, and he actually led the change from Times New Roman to the Calibri. And what he said, he had two main points in the article, and he said that with Times New Roman being pretty much a 90s font, they really wanted to modernize the look of Microsoft Word and Microsoft as a whole. I'm sure we've all noticed that Microsoft has become really blocky and square. I know in the PowerPoint logo it's actually just a square, and they're trying to simplify it and I guess look more young now. They're trying to modernize their entire brand. We're going to move on from this and move on to choosing the right font. Like I said, the font can really change the professionalism of a document. You'll see my quote, this document doesn't mean much, but it looks professional. This is Times New Roman, and if before you actually read the quotes, you'll probably say, well, this one is probably more professional. I know Dr. Adkins said earlier on Tuesday that sometimes when there's a bigger font, even if they're the same font, it just kind of makes it look dumb. This one is by Plato. He says the beginning is the most important part of the work. And this kind of states that, I mean, you can see how this one looks a little bit, or a lot more professional than this, but kind of his quote kind of works into this too, with presentations and font and things like that. You really want to think about what you're going to use before you actually start to put it down, so to speak. So what you want is you want to kind of think about, is this document going to be professional or personal? And then from there you can pick fonts and graphs and things like that. I know Nick's going to go over graphs a little bit later. And yeah, actually we will hand that over to Nick right now. To the model. Excuse me. I will jump in on the importing images also. I did this just to show you guys how this can change. You'll see this one's a lot more fuzzy and this one is very clear. I actually Googled the Google Slides image, and before you bring graphs, if you're getting them offline, or pictures, you want to think about how you're going to import them. So I'll tell you how I did both, and then you obviously see the difference between the two. If you just Google a picture and just click on it and bring it right into your presentation, you're getting a thumbnail image, which is a lot smaller in pixel density, and then when you zoom it out to get it the size of what you want, it's going to be very, very pixelated. What I did with this one is I actually clicked on the picture, went into the website, clicked on the picture again to get it on the actual web page, and then you can save it to your computer, and then from there you can actually import it into the presentation. And you see, that's the same picture, but the ways I imported it, it actually made it look much, much better. And you want to do that with any sort of visual design. You don't want it to be, this will make it look unprofessional.
Alright, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about adding visuals. And when you add visuals, there are important things that you need to keep in mind, like the placement, the message, and the tone. A good rule of thumb to go by when you're placing an image is called the rule of thirds. It's a photography and visual design concept in which you vertically and horizontally take the background and you split it into thirds, and then you put your key object on one of the intersections. This keeps it out of the center of your document, and it also makes it a little more natural and aesthetically pleasing. And then you need to think about, what am I trying to say? Because your visual aid should be an exact reflection of what you are actually saying. And then this image is going to display a tone or a mood. And then what kind of tone does this image display? So it obviously wouldn't be used if you're trying to get funded for a new proposal for a park, because that photo is going to be bright, it's going to have colors everywhere, and it's going to be fun because you want people to see it and see, oh my gosh, look at all the fun my family's going to have here. This doesn't look very fun. Alright. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about graphs. Graphs simplify, and they simplify complex information. And so, as engineers and scientists, we're going to be doing research, and we're going to have complex information that we're sometimes going to have to present to people that don't have an engineering or a scientific background. For instance, when you're trying to receive funding, you'll be talking to people with more of a financial background, like investors, and then they're going to understand graphs and numbers, but they're probably not going to understand quantum physics. And if they can't understand your research, they're not going to fund it, and you want your research funded. Now, we're going to go on a little bit more about how to make these graphs and the aesthetics of each one. Okay. I'll talk about this then. So, we're going to talk about axes and how they exaggerate, and how these can change a lot about the stuff that you're presenting. This is a fixed axis, and it exaggerates the change a lot in this presentation, and then if you started it from 0, it's not as exaggerated. You can use this to work for you, and it can work against you.
Alright, so I'm going to go into graphs. This is a really bad graph. What can you guys tell me is wrong with it?
There's no title.
Yeah, there's no labels. You have no idea what it's about.
Yep, there's no axis titles. There's a bunch of horizontal and vertical lines that don't really relate to anything. We have no idea what this is about. So here's a much better version of the same exact graph, except we know what it is about, because it has the axis titles. There's number of snakes for the year. We have a figure title here, which explains what the overall figure is, and it's about the number of snakes found on planes each year. And now this data is completely made up, so there's no actual snakes on planes. There might be. Who knows? So yeah, there's no more vertical lines, which didn't make any sense since each year lines up with the dot. There's horizontal lines to kind of judge where the point is to get a feeling for how many snakes were found in the graph, and if you wanted to add a trend line, if this was about something besides snakes on a plane, you could add a trend line and include the equation for how many snakes per year there have been on a plane, by average. And yeah, here's a comparison between the two. Again, we have lots of lines. The data is really confined in a large graph, so it doesn't make any sense. Over here we have the clean graph with axis titles and the figurehead. Figures always go on the bottom of graphs, pictures and charts, whereas later on I'll show you a chart or a table, and tables go on the top when you're labeling them. This is just done in the scientific community to kind of show the differences and kind of gauge what each is. And here is a bar chart. Again, there's no axis titles. There's vertical lines again. There's no reason to have vertical lines in a bar chart. And this is another way to convey the same exact information that was given before. And here's a much cleaner version. Unfortunately, we cannot see the minor lines, but there are 5 minor lines on this presentation, or on this chart. No, not really. A little bit. But yeah, it's much cleaner, and there's a figure title again, which explains what it is. And there's them compared again. Again, much cleaner. It's got axis, this one doesn't. Figure title. Now on to pie charts. We have no idea what these sections of pie charts, how much they are of the chart. There's no way to tell how many dogs are in this little square. And, yep. Here, the figure is pretty much the title. You can interchange them depending on what you were presenting. If it's in a document, you would want to keep the figure and get rid of the title, but if you're in a presentation, you could just have the title and not worry about having a figure. And here is them compared together. On to tables. There are too many decimal places in these tables. There's no reason for us to have a load of 1000.000 when there's no numbers to go on it. There's no units, and we don't know that 1000 could be 1000 millimeters, and we wouldn't know. Here we go. No, the decimal places are gone. Confined to 2 sig figs for most of these, and the strain is in scientific notation, and we have our table label at the top. It's important to make sure you label figures on the bottom and tables on the top. And yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to jump back in here, and this is obviously, doesn't really have a point. One thing I will tell you though is with presentations and visual design, you always want to have a ending that is simple and informative about what you have just given. And today we have informed you a little bit, just a little tiny bit, about visual design. And one thing I like this was actually in the template of Google Docs. And they say this is the most important takeaway that everyone has to remember. And like I said, you want it to be simple and easy to remember, but you also want it to affect the audience so they remember something. I know Dr. Atkins stresses you always want them to remember something from your writing. So you always want, especially in presentations, you want something at the end for the audience to remember. Does anybody have any questions about any of the slides prior to this one? Yes.
Did you say that this was on the Google Docs template?
Yes.
What template for what? I guess I'm-
So you're asking what the template was?
Right.
Okay, so essentially, when you open up a Google Slides, I guess not Google Docs, excuse me, Google Slides
Okay.
template, it gives you about 10 slides that kind of gives you a fake presentation.
I understand.
And where that goes, they kind of say, well, this is what you want here, this is what you want here. And I found it kind of interesting how they had this. So where we could put a graph here, we could put something here, but I thought it was kind of...
So can I follow up? Did you make this whole thing on Google
Slides. Yes.
So Dr. Atkins asked if we'd made this whole entire presentation on Google Slides, and yes, we did make this entire presentation on Google Slides. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. I know.
I got it.
When you're in front of people you don't know, it's going to feel a lot more natural.
Yes.
So when you made the pie charts and the graphs and everything, what software did you use?
I did it all on Excel, and I generated all the data myself. It was just a bunch of random points I put together. Except for that last one, that was actually part of my metallurgy class.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Anybody else? Give them a hand.